What's in a name? In a world more racially aware due to significant recent events, there is something I've been pondering that seems to go below the radar. Dictionary.com defines a name as a word or a combination of words by which a person, place or thing, a body or class, or any object of thought is designated, called, or known. I was born in the United Kingdom to Ndebele Zimbabwean parents, and phonetically am a product of both of those facts. While English is a language I think and communicate in, I can understand and speak Ndebele, albeit to the level of a 10-year-old. My first, second and last names are 100% Ndebele, however I'm referred to by a shortened version of my middle name. In my case, Andy is a shortened version of a unisex name Andile, which loosely means the clan has been fulfilled, added to, or multiplied. It is most definitely not short for Andrew, derived from the Greek Andreas or Andreas, meaning masculine, nor is there any connection to the Apostle St. Andrew. No, or not many parents, name their child off the back of a cereal box, so this long-winded story of what my name is and is not simply illustrates this from a standpoint of meaning and origin. There is a reason and a story behind one of the first gifts we receive when coming into this world, so why should we ever give that up? Does anybody have the right to change that forcefully, or should we ever be pressured into doing so? In my own case, I can't quite remember when, but my first name was jettisoned. I have been properly referred to for a 20th of my entire existence. This is while I lived in Zimbabwe. Funnily enough, even people who may have phonetically been able to do so since then have not used my first name at all. Neither have I insisted on doing so. It feels much more like my name has been relegated to the realms of a party trick or a talking point on an official call right before I'm asked, "What can I call you?" The commonly used phrase for this phenomenon is anglicization, defined by definition.net as a process by which something or someone, usually a word, is made more English, usually applied to language or culture. While in my case this was done while I was forming my identity, what of people who are forced to do this at a later stage in life? Is it right that I felt I had to do this at all? How many John Smiths or Jenny Jones have had to change their names or felt they needed to anywhere in the world? The argument of complexity of name falls flat on its face when you look at examples such as the former US President Barack becoming Barry Obama in college, or umpteen such pointless bastardizations. The word bastardizations is my opinion, of course. Nor is this phenomenon more visible and extreme than the huge population of Chinese students studying overseas taking on English names. In many cases I've seen, this is regardless of the complexity of what they've been known as all their lives or how distant their new names are to the meaning and or sound of the original. Why on earth is Yufan known as Wendy, or why should Jialing become Susan? Is the question, "What can I call you?" inherently racist or in the least disrespectful? Why should anybody have to carry an on-hand list of alternatives for their actual names? How many people reading, watching or listening to this have ever contemplated that or ever needed to? Mind you, I'm not talking about nicknames here. This is very different from people who try and fail to pronounce, of course. Personally, in my later years, I flat out refuse to answer that question and will give a person a shortened version of my own volition only, never by request. I always heard the counter-argument that this is a choice for people. However, studies and anecdotal evidence show that this is not always the case. Take a Guardian article from May 2019 which states, "A survey of 1,000 people by the law firm Slater and Gordon has found that a third of employees from minority ethnic backgrounds have been asked to change their name to something more English, with the majority of those polled worrying that their careers would suffer if they refused to do so." Or how about this, from a senior manager at a leading recruitment practice, also writing The Guardian, but in April 2013, and I quote, "Our job as recruiters is to send what we deem to be the right CV to our clients. If I put forward a candidate with an unusual or foreign name, 90% of the time I will hear nothing. When there are 300 CVs to go through, any foreign name is likely to be deleted without even being opened. We feel dreadful about it, but essentially it's a matter of time saving." End quote. This, in part, leads to a wider phenomenon known as the whitening of CVs, of which there is growing research, but which deserves its own article. In broad strokes, this involves the dilution of ethnic traits, employment history, and affiliations, and of course, changing of one's name. I recently read the story of Phuc Bui Diem Nguyen, a Vietnamese American who received an email from her trigonometry professor, Matthew Hubbard, asking her to change her name to something more English sounding. After she initially rejected this request, she received further correspondence from Hubbard insisting she complied because her name was, and I quote, an offensive sound in his language, unquote. On last reading, this professor had been suspended. Now think of the general demeanour of people who such things happen to. While not all people who come from foreign countries are like this, I mean the general demeanour. Whether they're international students fearing for their place in schools or employees in their workplaces, how many people does one truly think will speak out and not conform? When is a choice no longer a choice? All of the above points out a real issue, the scale of which will only be known through study and reporting. However, my concern is much bigger because of the predominance of where this is happening or where it's reported. Countries that claim to be or is known as multicultural, cultural melting pots or have international cities and establishments, and yes, a past which involves slavery and colonialism. Linked to all of this is another phenomenon. This phenomenon is how English-speaking people traverse the world expecting everybody else to speak their language, in most cases making absolutely zero effort to do as they expect others to do in the countries of origin. The holiday makers to India, Thailand, France, who can't even say thank you in the country they are visiting, while shouting at the rooftops about non-English speaking foreigners here. The sad reality is that there is no sense of irony by the people doing this. Back to a word I mentioned earlier, phonetics. There is a reality that people in different parts of the world or from different parts of the world won't be able to pronounce everything. However, I think that effort is much more important than getting something right. The Bangladeshi pronunciation of Bartholomew may not be how his parents pronounced it or what it's meant to be, but he would never need to be known as Barakat. Don't get me wrong, this is not an argument for not respecting the norms, culture and language of a place, but I feel a name to a person should be as unique as the person themselves. I believe the conversation should be about the origin and meaning of the names we are not accustomed to, as opposed to, what can I call you? There was thought and care given to the naming of said individual, and a history and importance given to the notion of self, of which I surmise the name is important. This collection of thoughts is meant to strike up conversation and dialogue, and by no means is this meant to speak to all cases. Thank you.